All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
It's story and short screens.
In a world where shadows dance and dreams take flight through the veil of reality into the night, Rob McConnell leads the way, a beacon so bright. With over 35 years, he ignites the light. A voice from the north where whispers are bold, stories untold in the echoes of old. Fact meets fiction in this realm of delight, in the X Zone where dark turns to bright. Welcome to the X Zone, believe and be free, a sanctuary for truth that dare to be seen, where the line between realms gently blurs, in a symphony of voices the mind stirs. With Rob McConnell, stories unfold, tales of the unknown that shimmer like gold.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Now, if you'd like to send me an email, my email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. Ah, wow, exciting days these days. It's really warm outside our studios right now. It's 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And, wow. Great weather to come and visit us here in Niagara, right on the coast of Lake Ontario. And on the other side of the Niagara Peninsula, you have Lake Erie, joined together by the Welland Canal and, of course, the Niagara River. And we're about 15 minutes away from Niagara Falls here in St. Catharines. So come on over, say hi. We'd love to have you. My guest this hour, Exo Nation, is a gentleman whose creative brilliance spans both the music and metaphysical worlds, and I'm talking about our guest, John Novello. From performing with music legends to exploring the frontiers of human consciousness, John is not only a world-renowned jazz and rock keyboardist, but also the acclaimed author of The Invisible Architect, How to Design Your Perfect Life from Within. Through his groundbreaking work, John reveals how each of us has access to an unseen creative force, a higher intelligence that can transform our reality, align us with our true purpose, and empower us to become conscious architects of our lives. Whether you're tuning in for a spiritual insight, scientific curiosity, or a deeper understanding of the human condition, this is a conversation you won't want to miss, Exo Nation. Joining us now from JohnNovelloAuthor.com is John Novello. And John, welcome back to the X Zone. It has been way too long.
It sure has, and it's interesting you said Lake Erie because I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, right on Lake Erie.
Oh my gosh! When we lived in Crystal Beach a couple of years ago, from our back balcony, or our veranda as they're called, if you looked straight, you would be looking at the state of Pennsylvania, and beautiful area, just a beautiful area. And I certainly do miss living in Crystal Beach, but it got a little bit too hard for me to handle. You know, I'd just fallen off the roof, and I was kind of in a bit of a mishmash condition, and we had 2 acres. And my wife says, Robbie, it's time we moved into a condo, honey, because you can't take care of the place anymore. So we moved to St. Catharines, and there's been no looking back. So, John, can you tell us about your journey from musician to author, and what inspired the shift?
Well, it's pretty crazy. While I was trying to become, a master and competitive musician, which started at 3 or 4 years old, on the side, I always had a hobby of being a prolific reader, especially in the area of theology and manifestation and mindset.
Right.
Because those things are very important when you're a creative musician, because it's like you against yourself. It's not like a regular job. You have to master this instrument.
Yeah.
So during all of my years, I was always on the side studying. And then one day, in about 2018, I woke up and my inner voice, which we'll talk about in a second, said, "Hey, it's time to pay it forward." I kind of went, "What are you talking about? I already written many music books and
Yeah.
inspired a lot of people all over. What do you mean? You need to write a philosophy book, a manifestation book." And I went, "No, I'm not that. That's not my background." And that was the impetus for me to start writing. And the inner voice wouldn't let me alone until I started to write it.
You've worn many hats, John. Performer, composer, educator, author. Which role do you feel defines you the best today?
Well, if you're going to put the qualification of today, I must say, because I have a new podcast, I got invited to have my own radio show like you do, and they nicknamed me the Jazz Philosopher, and the name of the podcast is As Within, So Without, because my whole book, The Invisible Architect, is about how our inner world creates our outer world. And so, although if you looked into a crystal ball and told me 30 or 40 years later in my life I'd be more of a philosopher jazz musician, I'd say, no, that's just a hobby. But now it looks like my 40, 50 years of playing music, and, I was blessed with talent, and I developed it, became quite successful, which I'm humbled by. But now it almost looks like that was just building my resume for my new hat as a jazz philosopher that wants to pay it forward and help other people achieve their desires. So to answer that question, I think I have more passion now for that part of it. Even though I'm still a musician, I'll probably work on another record. It's almost something, if you're a Sherpa and you climb Mount Everest 6 times and somebody goes, "Hey, you want to climb it again?" You kind of go, I'll leave
sure,
it
why
up to
not?
somebody else.
I would say, sure, why not? Because I look at Mount Everest and say, my God, I'd love to do it, but no, can't.
Yeah, I love those. I've always been a student of all that mountain climbing stuff,
Really,
and
eh?
I still watch things on YouTube about Mount Everest. But yeah, I think we're both over the hill to try to do that.
John, what role has music played in your spiritual and intellectual evolution?
Well, great question, because that segues nicely from what we were just talking about, because especially jazz,
Yeah.
more than any other music, jazz is very self-expressive. And there is no way when you're improvising, playing jazz, because it's a lot of improvisation, that the closer you are one with yourself and happy with yourself and who you are and have confidence, the more apt you're about to express yourself. And for some reason, audiences don't have to be connoisseurs. They sort of know when you're being yourself. They kind of go, "Wow, look at that guy. He's really in the zone."
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how good your chops are and everything. It's like, are you being honest when you communicate? And so music has always been that thread for me, that I'm always trying to play better. And how do I play better? Well, I have to become more one with myself. And that's why I study philosophy on the side, so I could become a better musician. And now, 50, 60 years later, the musicianship now has led me to now be more of a philosopher and sort of a spiritual advisor, which I never figured I would do, not in a million years.
How did your early experiences in life and music influence your view on higher consciousness, John?
Well, I remember my first big setback. I was 17 years old in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I was playing at the Ramada Inn, and there was a snowstorm. And the manager came. I had one of the hotter bands in the area, and we hadn't been discovered yet or anything. We were just a Holiday Inn cover, Ramada Inn cover band. And it was a big snowstorm, which happens a lot in Erie, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
because of the lake effect. So the manager comes up and says, "Hey, there's nobody here. Don't worry about your last set." So we were getting ready to leave, and a big touring bus pulls up, and he walks over. He goes, No, you're going to have to play. There's a whole bunch of people coming off the freeway, Route 90 there, because of the blizzard. So I didn't care. I love playing. So we got on stage and played again. Now, little did I know, this is, they say God works in mysterious ways.
Yes.
The name of God for me is the Invisible Architect. So I didn't know, but a famous producer was also pulling into the parking lot. And I don't know this, so I get on stage and just have a good time and play. And at the end of my set, this guy walks up. His name is Roger Karshner, and he was a very famous producer. I didn't know his name at the time, but there was a famous band in those days that had a hit record called Time Won't Let Me, The Outsiders. Very big hit.
Oh, yeah.
And he was driving. You remember that?
Yeah.
He was driving from New York City to Cleveland. Of course, you have to go by Buffalo and Erie and everything, right? And so he came downstairs to get a drink. He later on told me he almost didn't because he was tired, but his little voice said, hey, why don't you go check out the band, get a drink? So he came down, heard us. He was very amazed at our uniqueness. He comes up to me afterwards, and, I'm 17. I don't know anything about the music biz. He goes, hey, are you the leader? It looks like you are. I said, yeah. He goes, are you guys signed? Rob, I didn't even know what that meant. Signed? I said, what do you mean signed to what? He goes, do you have a record contract? I said, not that I know of. We're just playing here and all around town. He goes, well, you are now. And he got all our information, and 3 weeks later. So to answer your question, that was my first amazing win, and we ended up doing a record, and it became number 3 in the back east area. And I thought, well, life is just amazing. Look how easy this was, There's no struggle. And what do you think happened? Well, the record goes up to number 7 or 6 or 5, I don't know. And those were the days of the Vietnam War. And my singer, and lead singers are very important in a band, got drafted.
Oh.
And he goes into the Army, so I tried to get him to get out of it. I said, you got to get out of it. We're on a roll. He goes, I can't. So he ended up somehow joining the National Guard, so he didn't have to go to Vietnam or something. And he never told us that. And so next thing I know, there was all these gigs, and they had a tour. And I started lip singing, being the keyboard player, to take the place of the singer. And the producer, Roger Karshner, figured it out. And he goes, John, where's Mike, the lead singer? And I had to tell him. And, he goes, the way we work is we release a single, and if it becomes a hit, then we do an album. And it became a hit, but your lead singer and you are the two crucial people in the band. I don't think I can keep our deal. So he canceled our record deal.
Oh, no.
And that threw me into a huge loss in spin, and I think set me more into trying to figure out my life and getting into spirituality and all that kind of stuff.
John, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our first break. At Exonation, our guest this hour is John Novello. Visit his website, johnnovelloauthor.com. And when we come back, we're going to come back with one of John's great hits. Good to go. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. You're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and streaming around the world on classic1220.ca. Don't go away.
This realm of delight in the X Zone where dark turns to bright. Welcome to the X Zone. Believe and be free. A sanctuary for truth that dare to be seen. Where the line between realms gently blurs. In a symphony of voices the mind stirs. With Rob McConnell, stories unfold. Tales of the unknown that shimmer like gold. Every guest a new chapter, with eyes open wide in this vast tapestry.
Welcome back, everyone. John Novello is our special guest. JohnNovelloAuthor.com. John, tell us about that track. Let me see. Good to go.
Good to go. Yeah. Well, I've always had this inner voice. When I was 3 years old, I was spoken to with his voice, and that voice has been with me my whole life. And that's why 2018, I woke up one day and that voice said, "You need to pay it forward." And so I started writing the book, The Invisible Architect. However, about a year or two before that, I hooked up with this producer friend of mine in Los Angeles, and we were co-producing a new record for me. And I had already had several top 10, top 5 Billboard hits in the smooth jazz area.
Wow.
So I started writing some new music. And I was in my studio. It was like 7 o'clock at night, LA, and I heard the melody you just heard. Ba-da-da-da-da. And I went, wow, that's a catchy melody.
Yeah,
And when you're a composer, you're always thinking you're stealing it when you hear it that good, right?
Yeah.
And I said, God, I hope I'm not plagiarizing this, but this thing sounds like a blessed hit. So I took 3 hours and carved it and played it and did all my editing. It was so amazing. I got the rough demo down in 3 hours. I ran into my house to wake up my wife, the one who's now in heaven looking down on me. And I said, honey, you got to wake up. You got to wake up. I just wrote a #1 hit, my first note. And she goes, well, how do you know? I said, I just know. I know. She wouldn't come out because she was too tired. So the next day I sent it to my producer manager guy, and I told him it was a hit. And he goes, well, I got to tell you, it's a really good song, but, it's very competitive. And we finished the track, and we released it. And within 4 days, it climbed up the Billboard charts to #1.
Holy cow.
Not only on Billboard, but I'm on 7 other stations and remained there for many, many weeks. And I just said, now, how you can't make that stuff up. How did I know? Where did it come from? To this day, I don't know. All I know is it seemed like I channeled it, and I'll take it.
I've been hearing a lot of stories from authors and musicians where there seems to be a lot of channeling going on, more channeling and downloading than any other time that I can remember doing this show for the last 35 years. Do you have any idea what is going on or who is downloading all this information for us?
Well, my theory is that everything is energy if you go into quantum physics and physics, and that means everything has a frequency.
Right.
And their individual frequency, a rock has a frequency, an insect has a frequency, human beings have a frequency, and I think the collective has a frequency. Even though if you take a look at the world right now, and it seems like, wow, we're in trouble as a world, as human beings, I think, though, there's enough creativity and raising of collective frequency that somehow is hooking up to the invisible architect, which I call the quantum intelligent energy field, and it's just starting to wanting to help mankind in some way, form. And so the people that are creative, that have a chance to do that, I think are downloading information. That's my only explanation, and I don't claim to know if that's true or not.
It seems that those who are in tune with each other are able to exchange information in a way that has never been done before. I know this with certain guests I have. I know this with certain managers, radio stations, TV stations, and so on. The connection, the bind between those involved is very strong, and it's just like, you're able to read each other's mind before the concept is even put on the table.
Well, that's part of interacting with musicians. When I'm on stage with a band, first of all, I have to not only choose the right players at the right level of competence and expertise, but I have to feel that telepathic
connection,
spiritual connection. And I can tell immediately if they have that or not, and they're not in my band if I don't feel that. And so you would know from doing 35 years, probably more than me, and notice that is happening more and more. I haven't been paying attention from a group collective like you are.
It has been and is increasing on a daily basis. And yes, there's a lot of geopolitical turmoil in the world. Yes, there's a lot of nastiness, as my grandson calls it. He says, "Papa, why
Hmm.
is the world so nasty these days? Was it always like this?" And it's people want to know what is behind all this, and I really hope that with the opening of the consciousness that the world is experiencing, that we'll get down to the answer. And I think that your invisible architect is going to play a key role.
Well, that's one of my mission statements. I want to read off my vision. When I wrote the book,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, all over the world, I started because it became an Amazon #1 bestseller in about a week, and I went, "Oh my God, go figure!" Here, I thought I was just writing a book and paying it forward. Now I almost got a new career, and I had people sending me emails going, "Hey man, we love your book. Do you do one-on-one mentoring?" Now I've done a lot of one-on-one music instruction, but never spiritual or personal development stuff. And I kind of said, "Well, I guess I could."
Mm-hmm.
So I started piloting it with people. Now it's picking up like crazy. So I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring, and my vision has now really manifested itself and focused itself. And so my vision is to significantly transform the quality of one's life by raising their mindset and frequency to the God invisible architect frequency, because that was the frequency that was used to create the universe, all things including us. So if we can raise each other's frequency, then that will start manifesting in a better world, because it will start raising the frequency of the entire planet. But I feel that you almost have to do it on a one-on-one basis. So I feel like that's what my new twilight years here goal is to work with people one-on-one and write material and books and do podcasts and things in that area, because I've already done the musical thing. Music is great for inspiration and entertainment, but it doesn't really get into a person's soul and help them raise their frequency. But for a minute, it makes them feel good, but then they got to go back to their life. You know what I mean?
I sure do. Let's dive into your book, The Invisible Architect. What is the core message behind it?
The core message is the subtitle, really, which says how to design your perfect life from within. Now, why did I use design? Why did I use perfect life? And why did I use from within? Well, there's a lot of research stemming back to biblical times. As a man thinketh, so is he, and what ye shall so ever think in prayer, you shall, all this kind of stuff. People
Right.
know about this, but they don't know how to apply it to their life. And many New Thought authors have written about this, philosophers. And so when I got the idea to write the book, and the architect, which the voice that I heard at 3 years old that was with me my whole life, and actually helped save my wife, which I'll talk about later, the one that now just passed away, but 23 years ago I ended up saving her because of an inner telepathic voice. But the whole idea of perfect life is because God is all-knowing, all-loving, all-perfect, right? And designing your life doesn't happen from without. A lot of people think it's that way. Have, do, be is wrong. A lot of people think, well, you have to have X and Y and Z and money and connections in order to do this and become something. But successful people actually use be, do, have, which is you be what you want to achieve, and then you have faith and advanced gratitude, and let God, the architect, who's the real power, help you co-create and achieve. So be, do, have. So the main part of the book is how to use the be, do, have manifestation formula in order to help clear your inner world so it can be very certain and focused, because in the end, your inner world will create your outer world.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think that what is happening, for example, like your one-on-one mentoring and getting people to the point where they can actually join the collective. And if enough people do this with individuals, prepare them and show them the way into the collective, everybody rises in their frequencies.
Exactly. Everybody rises in their frequencies. And that's one way to help create a better planet, because, I don't think politics is going to do it.
Oh, God, no. Leave it to the politicians, and they'll destroy the earth as soon as they can.
Exactly. Well, my father was not a philosopher, but he used to always say, "Hey, you know what the definition of a politician was?" And I said, "What?" He said, "They'll say and do anything to get reelected."
That is true.
I think I
That
think
is
he
so.
was right.
Your dad was a very smart man.
Yeah.
In your book, you mentioned the law of consciousness, John, in your writings. Can you explain this concept in simple terms for our listeners?
Yes. Well, whatever you become aware of
Mm-hmm.
is what you are creating. In physics, there's the law of observation. Does a tree fall in the forest? If you haven't observed it, did it really fall if you haven't observed it? And then in quantum physics, observing particles through cameras and various other things
Right.
changes the particles. So observation has something to do. There's a spiritual part of energy creation going on with observation. So inner creating outer is the same thing of saying what you're conscious of. So if a person, had a lot of problems, and let's say they were a lady and they were abused by men all their life, and now
Right.
they've got an idea that all men are bad, the Bash syndrome, that means they're very aware and conscious of men being bad, and so they're probably going to keep selecting the wrong relationships. That's because their consciousness, the law of consciousness is going on. So that brings me back to my book. If I'm working with them on one-on-one, I'm going to finally show them that, listen, here's what you're conscious of this. Well, but it happened to me. Yeah, but it's not serving you anymore. So we need to change that consciousness, your inner world, that be, to a different one. Like I now choose great relationships, and then I have a whole methodology called the Invisible Architect Alignment Protocol that I've sort of tested.
John,
that
I
I've
hate to
used
do
with
I hate to
people
do this, buddy, but
to
I've
do
got to
that.
take my break. Please stand by. John Novello is our special guest, Exo Nation. Great guy, great musician, just an all-around great guy. Visit his website, johnnovelloauthor.com. This is the Exxon. I'm Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the Exxon Broadcast Network, TalkStar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and being streamed around the world on your hometown radio, classic1220.ca. It's funny, Exonation. During the break, I was telling John that his music is the way music should be done. How the kids listen to this music these days. I have no idea. I've given up on trying to understand it. Love jazz. Jazz is my favorite type of music. There's a restaurant here in St. Catharines called Cat's Caboose, and every Saturday afternoon they have live jazz. The place is
Oh,
packed with about 200 to 300 people. And
Wow.
you just get into the groove, and it just takes you to a different world. And this is the kind of music John Novello plays, Exo Nation. Visit his site at johnnovelloauthor.com. Your work bridges science and spirituality, John. How do you reconcile the two in your teachings?
Well, as I was saying earlier, we all wear different hats. Whether you're a radio poncho or an auto mechanic or a jazz musician or, God forbid, a politician. And
No swearing on this show, John.
yes, so whatever the hat you choose, hopefully it's something that you have passion for.
Yeah.
and then you develop that passion and you communicate your expression. And I have a saying in my book, The Invisible Architect, or God, or the quantum intelligent energy that permeates everything, expresses its perfection through each of us. So it's an amazing thing if you think of it that way. So that's why in my mentoring, I try to hook people up to the invisible architect, the alignment, in other words, so it's called the invisible architect alignment protocol, because as you hook up to that God frequency and tune into that frequency like a radio station, then we were talking earlier, I believe, about downloading.
Yes.
And so channeling and all kinds of information that comes from that unbelievable high frequency called the God frequency is able to come down. So I think that as we all raise our frequency collectively and individually, we're able to tune into that, and so more downloading and channeling happens. So there's the little bit of quantum, I tend to use the word quantum spirituality, which is sort of science getting into the spiritual world, you know?
It's almost like the collective in Star Trek, the New Generation, you know, with Q and the, what was the name of that group of people that were connected to each other?
The Borg.
The Borg, yeah.
And they were evil, though. They used to consume everybody.
Right, but let's put them on the good side of the coin.
Right.
And you know what? I can see the connection. I really can. You know, like you had Q as the invisible architect, and then you had everyone underneath him as the collective. Each individually, they weren't anything but a solitary unit, but put them all together again, and they could move mountains. And I really believe that the human race is the same.
Now, it's interesting you bring that up. I can't believe it. I was thinking of that today. You know why? I'm writing the new book, a sequel called Beyond the Architect, which means beyond God, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And if you remember the punchline in Q was acting as if like he was a god, but he was a little spoiled brat boy playing around, and his parents eventually reprimanded him and saved the Enterprise.
Yes,
Remember that part?
I sure do.
So in a sense, he wasn't God. He was just a little kid that was being a brat. And so I was thinking of that today because I'm getting into some very heavy quantum spirituality and philosophy research. I'm trying to put a sequel to the book called Beyond the Architect. And then I thought about Q, and I went, wow, wouldn't it be funny if the architect is... So it's funny that you brought that up.
Is it possible that life, consciousness, spirituality is so simple that we, in this day and age, if it's something is too simple, there has to be something wrong with it? Is it possible that we're missing the simplicity of spirituality by looking for something that is too complicated when the simple answer is right in front of us?
Yeah, I have a term for that. I call it the power of simplicity. Because I think the more complicated one gets, the further away from real power and real spirituality one gets. And I think there was a book written years ago by, I forget his last name, was it James Redford or no, James somebody, called Celestine Prophecy. You remember that book?
I sure do.
It's a very famous book. It was fiction,
yeah.
But he talks about a guy, I think in Philadelphia, who was disillusioned about life, and he travels to, I believe, Peru, and hooks up with a bunch of spiritual teachers and goes through things. And one of the key parts of the book is the author says, you know, trouble with life on Earth, it's becoming too complicated and becoming too separate from source, meaning the architect. We're becoming too separate. As we become separate, we go off and go down the dark side.
Plus, it's a lot, you know, there seems to be so many different religions, so many different religious philosophies these days. How does one keep track of which one is right and which one is wrong? Or are they all right and wrong at the same time?
That's a great question. I do have an answer for that because I've done a lot of research on this. The key word to me that makes a lot of them not so good is organized. When you cross over from my research and a lot of out-of-body experiences, that I've experienced and researched, especially after my first wife passed away, there is no religion on the other side. There's no Catholics, there's no Christians, there's no atheists. We're spiritual beings, and we cross over, and we incarnate in a lifetime to carry out various hats and scripts and to learn various lessons, similar to, remember the movie Groundhog Day with Bill
I
Murray?
sure do. One of my favorites.
Right, and why is that a favorite of people, and most people, is because I think it speaks the truth in a harmonic way of reincarnation. This guy was a jerk, and he was a condescending you-know-what, and so they had the author on one day that wrote the script, and he says the movie doesn't show it, but in actual fact, in his script, the whole idea was Bill Murray lived about 1,000 days in order for him to finally get his act together so he could move on and become a good person and have a good relationship. And lots of people have different beliefs, and I don't want to get into stepping on anybody's toes, but it makes more sense to me because if you look at what you just said, all the different organized religions, they all have a bit of truth as a thread, but in my opinion, they go off the deep end, and that's when man gets involved and makes it complicated and comes up with all these stupid rules that have nothing to do with anything, that mess people up, in my opinion.
I agree with you. By the way, my producer sent me over a little message. The Celestine Prophecy was written by James Redfield.
Redfield, I knew it wasn't Redford. James Redfield, yeah, exactly. Great book.
It certainly was. I believe that it opened a lot of minds to the possibilities that people were just shutting out because it made no sense to them. It seems that people want to start in the middle instead of going to the beginning and learning and reading and understanding and then sharing with other people, getting into the conversation, exchanging the information, tuning into the different frequencies, as you would say. So I think that we're on the right path, John, and it's people like you who have caught on and who are writing great books, playing great music, because we need to have more positivity in this world today. We need more love in this world today. And I think the hippies had the right idea going back to the late 60s. Make love, not war. Good vibrations. They had it. They were just a little bit too soon. And man, you look back now and say, my Lord, if we would have only listened, where would we be today?
Yeah, remember the lyrics to John Lennon's tune "Imagine"?
Sure do.
I mean, they were amazing. You know, the hippies had the concept of love, but the problem is they, for some reason, I think the whole thing, they became lazy, and you can't just do nothing. This is an action universe.
Yeah.
So I like what you said. The more creativity and positive vibes and love that we put into the world, we can't just sit on top of a mountaintop and contemplate our navel and achieve enlightenment. That doesn't serve others. It serves you, but I think we have to help each other, like you said.
Yes, we do. It's a fact that we live in a binary existence. You have up and like binary 0, 1, right? You have up, down, left, right, dark, bright, male, female, God, Satan, good, bad. And when you look at all these simplistic ways of looking at life, you had the hippies with make love, not war. At the same time, the Vietnam War was going on.
I know.
And then you had Kent State, you had all this war, and here you've got these, God bless them for what they did, the hippies. They tried so hard, and I remember one picture of a flower girl putting a daisy down the rifle barrel of a National Guardsman. It's. I look at the 60s and I say, my God, they were the times. Or as my dad told me when I was a kid, in the good old days. Well, the 60s were the good old days for me. You had
and that, by the way, was some of the greatest music, because...
I was just going to say that.
Isn't that, I mean, think I did a lot of analysis of music and everything. And during the 60s and early 70s, if you went to the top 100, almost every act was A, unique, and B, unbelievable. You know, the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix, and then you got Tower of Power and Earth, Wind, and Fire. I could go on and on, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Look at the top 100 today. They almost all sound the same, and there's nobody that stands out. It's just like, what happened? The uniqueness is gone. And the same thing even during our time. Remember cars? A Chevy was a Chevy. A Ford was a Ford. Now they all look the same again. So we've lost quality. We've lost personality, uniqueness, and that to me is lower frequency stuff, and we need to reverse that dwindling spiral.
John Novello is my very special guest this hour. John, it's great having you with us. Please stand by. We have to take our final break. And X Zone Nation, do yourself a favor. Visit www.johnnovelloauthor.com. And we'll be back as we wrap up the first hour of tonight's show here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, my special guest, John Novello. Don't go away. And welcome back. And if you're wondering what that sound is coming out of your radio, it's called music. You know, you can actually sit there and listen to it, and you'll notice that your foot is starting to tap. Yeah. Can you just imagine that? This is what music was like when John and I were in our prime. It meant something. You had different songs that would relate to certain circumstances and situations in your life. For example, where have all the flowers gone? San Francisco, the Haight-Ashbury times, the hippies, and then you had Woodstock, and then you had great acts like Queen and the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and the list goes on and on and on. And one of the names in that list now is our guest, John Novello. And John, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. And thank you for the music that you've brought into the world so that people can actually sit, enjoy, and savor some of the best music that they can ever listen to. And So Nation, if you'd like to buy any of John's wonderful music, it's available on his website. That's johnnovelloauthor.com, as well as any other place where fine music is sold, online or offline. The music industry and music lovers all over the world were saddened to find out the passing of Brian Wilson what was it, last week, John?
Yeah, I think so. Brian Wilson, Beach Boys, yeah.
Yeah, and the bands, there are no great bands anymore. Bands like Chicago, like the Beach Boys. And I really believe that this is why they're living on after all these years, because people are searching for music. They're searching for the music that meant something to them, some music that they could, associate with. And I just hope that it continues. And do you think the way the world is changing, John, with the insurgence of spirituality, consciousness, and the invisible architect, that music will start to return to where it used to be, and people will use music as not only a form of entertainment, but a form of inner and spiritual communication?
I believe so, and that's why one of my goals is to help raise the frequency individually through my one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
mentoring, because it makes that person a better person. And as the frequency gets closer to the God frequency, remember, God is the ultimate creator,
Yeah.
and we're supposedly made in the image and likeness. And so we are baby creators. And so as we move more and more towards raising our frequency, the tendency is for us to create, and we all have the ability to create in different ways. It doesn't have to be music. It could be writing. It could be dancing. It could be whatever. So I sure hope as the individual frequencies raise and more creative output and content go into the world, that will outcreate the negativity and dwindling spiral and get more of a positive spiral and get back to a renaissance. Because you think about classical times and
Mm-hmm.
Baroque times, Beethoven and Bach and all those people, that was a renaissance, and then it died down. Then you had the 60s, which was another renaissance, and it died down. And I just am hoping and praying that we will have another renaissance in music as frequency gets raised.
I'm sure that we will, John, and I believe wholeheartedly that the work that you're doing now to help raise this frequency and to bring the awareness back to where it should be will certainly be part of that renaissance. How many records have you recorded, all told?
Well, I've done, as far as solo records with my band Niacin. This is not the music that you're playing today. The music you're playing today is called the John NOVELLO Project, John NOVELLO Band. I've got about, oh, 7 or 8 solo CDs there with that kind of music, more smooth jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got more intense jazz with a progressive rock group called Niacin, which is legendary bass player Billy Sheehan,
Yeah.
who played with Steve Vai and all these other people. So it's more of a progressive rock fusion instrumental thing. And there's 9 to 10 CDs there, so that's 17, 18. And then I've got some solo piano CDs. So I've probably put out about 23 or 24 CDs under my name or
My
under that
gosh.
band. And then, of course, I played on other people's records, but not so much. I'm normally my own guy.
If John Novello of today, excuse me, was looking back on his life to where he was a little boy, what would you think? For example, if you were 7 years old and you were able to see all the accomplishments you'd have and that you do have, would you have believed it?
I would have not believed it, because I was actually sort of reminiscing and observing what my many years on this planet, my resume, what they've accomplished. And it was funny, I had a dream the other day, and I said, why am I getting into this metaphysical stuff now? And I'm excited about that. Music is now fun, but more of a hobby. And I sort of was asking the architect for some answers, and I had this dream, and the dream was very real. And it said, we come into this world with pre-birth scripts
Mm-hmm.
that we are to carry out, even though we do have free will. And the situation is, your music career was literally a stepping stone. In other words, a resume for you to go into your jazz philosopher career now, because it is helping that career. A lot of publicists are going, yeah, the Grammy Award-winning jazz pianist blah, 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 has now read at Amazon, blah, blah, blah. And I went, oh, I see. My resume is giving me positioning and credibility for me to do this thing in my twilight years, this hat. Who would have figured? So to answer your question, yeah, at 7 years old, it would have been overwhelming if somebody would have showed me all that. I would have went, you got the wrong guy.
It seems that music throughout the centuries has always been an educational tool, a learning tool. We look at hymns, we look at various other types of music, and the message has been given to us to share with the masses. And I think that one way to get a message across is through the musical channels, which gives you the different frequencies. So you're right on track, my
Well,
friend.
music, they say, is God's language, and I believe
That's true, yeah. So what's next for John Novello?
Well, I'm writing a new book called Beyond the Architect, which is like a sequel, and although it's going to build upon some of the spiritual personal development principles in the first book, it's going to get beyond the architect, like the name says, and I'm really excited about it because I never thought I'd write another book in this area, but it's happening again. I woke up only 5 days ago with the title Beyond God, and I looked it up because God is the visible architect, and there's already a book called Beyond God, and I don't like to write another book, even though my book's going to have a different theme. And I went, wait a minute, why am I calling it Beyond God? I've already got the name for the God is the invisible architect, so Beyond the Architect. And as soon as I said it, all kinds of information started to download
again.
like it did when I wrote The Invisible Architect. So now that's what I'm doing.
How are these downloads affecting your creativity when it comes to your music compositions? Are you finding a difference?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Music is now effortless. Before, I had to work. I wasn't one of those guys that was just born a prodigy like Mozart and just blah, blah, blah. I had talent, but I had to really work hard and polish and work 3, 4, 5 hours a day and practice. And it's interesting now that my attention, I have no more attention on having to create music for a living or wanting to create a CD because I want to make it or just because I want to do one. Now it's almost as if like, well, let me write another CD. Let me play some music. Let me go sit at the piano. And it's very effortless. But now when I go back into the author hat, it's channeled, but I still have to carve it to get it to its final point. I guess that's what the challenge is. So that's why I have a little bit more interest and passion, because I can feel like I'm directly helping people. And it's really easy to me. Somebody hired me the other day to play at some event. I just went on stage and played and had a good time, and it blew everybody away. And I was really startled because I hadn't played in about 6 months because I've been doing a lot of writing. And I went, oh, yeah, that's your other life, you know.
Who's your favorite musician?
Well, I have so many that it's hard.
How about giving me the top three?
Pardon?
How about the top three?
I would say in the area of classical music, Bach and Beethoven.
Oh, God, yeah.
In the area of jazz, Chick Corea and this a Cuban pianist named Gonzalo Rubalcaba. And in the commercial world, especially the 60s we were talking about, Jimi Hendrix.
Oh,
how's that?
Yeah, fascinating. They don't make music like that anymore, my friend.
I used to listen to Jimi Hendrix, even though I was an organist and a pianist, and take every note off the record, even though he was a guitarist, even the bends and all the emotion, and I would take hours and write it down and then learn it on the keyboard. Isn't that amazing?
Well, my friend, the time has come when you and I must say so long. We've got about 40 seconds. What is your final message that you'd like to share with the X-Zone Nation tonight, John?
Well, my final message is I'm all about now helping people one-on-one create a better life so we can create a better world. So I'd love to help anybody that's interested, that wants to rise to their highest self, ascend to their highest self, and make the best of who they are. And can I say another website we haven't mentioned?
Oh, please, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a specific mentor site, even though you can get to it by the other site. It's called go.johnnovelloauthor.com/register. So go.johnnovelloauthor.com/register, and people can book free consultation with me, get a free book, and just hook up with me. And I love doing that.
John Novello, take care of yourself, my friend. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And I look forward to the next time you and I meet back here in the X Zone.
Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Be well. All right, Exo Nation, I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as hour number 2 of the X Zone starts right here from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and of course our good friends at your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ, and they're streaming us at classic1220.ca. I'll be back on the other side in a few minutes as hour number 2 starts.